Greetings, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Earth School Journey. I am your peer guide, Uni, and this is my sister, peer guide,
I am
Umi
your peer
Steph.
guide, Uni.
Excuse me for that. trying to keep things, going and make sure I know what's going on all platforms. So I apologize for that. But yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so thankful that you are here to join us this evening as we continue with Earth School Journey orientation. We are in week two of orientation, and we will, take a deep dive into that a little bit later. But for now, we're going to do a quick check in, and I will ask my sister Umi Steph, how is Earth School going for you this week? Are there any lessons that are standing out for you this week, or have you identified what your curriculum is this week?
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's several things at play, but one of the big things that keeps coming up for me right now is this idea of worthiness and feeling worthy of more than enough. Because there was a time when I didn't have enough, right? And so I wanted enough. And I'll just be happy with enough. And so now that I'm at enough and you know God has put this desire in my heart to do more, right? And so now I need more than enough to do that, do some of the things that I feel called to do. Just I've been really dealing with lately, just that it's not ungrateful to want more, and that I am worthy of more, because I wouldn't have that desire if I wasn't meant to have it. You know what I mean? And so because I know that God wants me to have it, then I'm worthy of it, obviously. Right. So that's kind of been a theme that's been through this week.
I love that. And I can completely relate to that. You know what I mean? When, growing up, I'm not going to say we didn't have, but, the type of structure, like the environment that I was in, was kind of like you need to be grateful for what you have. You know what I mean? And I was definitely for many years afraid to ask for more. I would, always work for it. And even then, I would just accept whatever was given to me. Like, okay, sure, I need to be grateful for what's given to me. Like, I shouldn't desire more. I shouldn't rock the boat. People aren't going to look at me in a certain light. They're going to think I'm ungrateful. They're going to think, whatever, and so in order to just kind of keep things copacetic, I would, not ask for more. And what I realized is, as a result, I didn't ask for more of myself at times too. Like I didn't necessarily push myself like I would have liked to, because I was kind of, I felt like I wasn't deserving of more. So I can completely understand that, and that's actually a part of my curriculum as well, my overall curriculum. So I get
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But I would say my lesson for the week, that was coming up for me, honestly, was more so about um, sitting in and pushing myself through discomfort. You know what I mean? And to some degree, it's okay to be uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to growing and challenging yourself, and just really being really striving to be a better version of yourself. There's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable, but I would sit in uncomfortable situations where I wasn't being, where people weren't being kind to me, where I wasn't being respected, where I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I would sit in situations and just take things because I felt like I wasn't deserving of better, because I wasn't deserving of more. And so, my lesson this week has been one of, and I'm like getting a little emotional about it, because it's like really so deep, that, that I do deserve to be treated well. I do deserve to be in spaces that make me feel comfortable for who I am. I bring good things to the space. I bring kindness. I bring love. I bring, whatever I have, you know what I mean? At the best that to the best of my ability at that. I
Hmm.
try to leave, you know, my shadows and, those types of things, somewhere else and bring the light with me. And so, just knowing that I don't necessarily have to sit in spaces that make me feel uncomfortable for being who I am, sitting in discomfort. So
Right.
that's really been one of my big lessons this week. I'm like, Uni, are you gonna, you're not necessarily really feeling certain things. Are you gonna are you gonna repeat this lesson?
Right.
Are you
Right.
gonna
Right.
repeat
Right.
this lesson and sit in this discomfort and keep going? Or are you gonna say, no, thank you.
Right.
It's time for me to, move on. So yeah,
Right.
that's definitely my lesson this week. And thank you so much for sharing your Earth School lesson for the week. We got lessons every week.
Every
Listen, it
day.
doesn't stop.
Never
For real.
stop.
It does not stop. And being able to identify them and being able to give ourselves that grace and having community people that we can talk to and people that we trust that we can work through these things with. It's just beautiful. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now we're gonna just shift gears a little bit. We're gonna move into the conversation, tonight's conversation rather, in a little bit. But first, I wanted to do just a quick recap of what we talked about last week in orientation, week one. We've each spoke about our perspectives of Earth School, how we view Earth School, and for the most part, it's very similar. You have, certain key points that you have, and I have certain key points that I have, but we definitely meet in the middle, and it's absolutely a beautiful thing. We each talked about what we believe the purpose of Earth School was, or is, excuse me, what the purpose of Earth School is, and you know, um, which again is community. It is working with each other. It is, getting back to that oneness that we came from, that we forgot somewhere along the way when we got here to Earth School. Beautiful, beautiful. I like that way. um and so we talked about that, and we really, we talked a little bit about reincarnation. I shared a little bit about how I believe that I don't really know, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you may reincarnate somewhere else. Maybe you don't reincarnate back to Earth. Who knows? We got
Hmm.
to give this all we got. We got to give it all we got. We got to love all we can. We got to be there for each other all we can. We got to treat this Earth right all we can. We got to give this all we got while we're here, because we don't know what's coming next at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
We talked about calling in our peer guides, our community, our people, our help, you know what I mean? Which was absolutely beautiful. We both spoke about how, we wanted people to really come in and help us so that we could really graduate to this next level. And thankfully, it materialized and we were able to manifest that for ourselves and each other. It
Mhm.
was absolutely beautiful. And so this week we are going to be talking about we're going to be moving the conversation forward and talking about our higher selves. We're talking about karma, and we're going to talk about the soul's curriculum as well as graduation this week. So I'm really excited to get this conversation going, and hopefully we have some people who will watch either the live or the recording and chime in and share their thoughts and opinions. And I would like to thank everybody, first of all, who has been liking our posts. I don't think we have many comments yet, but lots of likes, a few shares, and quite a few views as well. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and really, I guess, being interested in, our view of Earth School and how we feel that, having this perspective really gives us all, a really good framework to keep us grounded and help us stay focused and grow here, so that we know, again, that we are giving this all we got, and we're not just thinking that, hey, I could just come back and do this again, or, thinking that, oh, well, I can repent and it'll be, you don't know, we don't know.
Right.
Let's give it all we got. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. So we are going to move on to our first question of the evening, and I'm gonna shoot it over to you, Umi, and ask you, what do you think is the curriculum here on Earth School? What do you think the curriculum is?
Oh, okay. Well, I think that it really depends on the person. I think that there is like overarching themes, right? And the overarching theme is love. I think no matter what your lesson is or how you're learning it or what aspect, it's something to do with love. Whether it's self-love, love of others, love of planet, love of God, love of the universe, however. But I think the way those lessons manifest, it really depends on the individual and what they were seeking in this lifetime to learn or to experience. I don't, it's funny because we call it Earth School, but it's not so much about the lesson. It's really about the experience of it, of going through that experience, of having the experience. And yes, you're learning, but the objective really isn't the learning. The objective is the experience because that's where everything happens. And so I believe it's definitely love, compassion, grace, all of those things, but how it manifests in your life I think is something that you choose. You decide whether or not you want to work on in this lifetime family relationships versus marital relationships versus friendships or um work. There are people who that's their whole life is work, and maybe that is just what they're meant to do in that lifetime. And I also don't think it's not just about the lessons and the curriculum, but that the curriculum is lined up so that whatever your mission is gets completed, because that's where you're going with it. So if your mission is to write a book, right, you're going to have experiences that are going to make writing that book come to fruition, because your life has to set you up to be in that position. You can't write a book if you've never had experiences. If you've had a plain Jane, boring, like everything went well life, like people who write the best books and people who have had stuff happen to them. And so, I think the curriculum is more than just about the lessons. It's about these experiences and just gaining this database of like knowledge of experience, which makes you more relatable to other people, which again leads back to that love, that interaction between people. But how about you? What do you think the curriculum is?
You know what? I agree wholeheartedly with you. And it's one of the reasons why, when you were so adamant about us making sure that we put Journey on the end of Earth School, I was like, that makes perfect sense to me. You know what I mean? It is about the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, oh, I want to lose, necessarily 15 pounds by next week. It's about, are my habits in alignment with what I really want to do? Am I, having a good mindset? Am I being
Mm-hmm.
disciplined? Am I doing, it's really about the journey, no matter how we apply that, to our lives, And so when you talk about an aspect of, perhaps the curriculum, and you say, okay, maybe in this life, my overarching journey, or curriculum or lesson is to, is to bring forth a family or bring together family. You know what I mean? How am I going about that? You know what I mean? Am I tuning into myself? Am I following my higher self's guidelines for, really am I remembering what I said
Right.
or what I signed on the dotted line with the what they call the
Contract.
small writing
The
and
small print. Yeah. Did I read the small
yes,
print? Yeah.
that's really the journey for me is about the
Right.
small print because I remember, not realizing, even though I went through ups and downs on my life, but for some reason I thought when I got to be an adult that it would be all good. You know what I mean? I
Mm,
thought everything would be great. But, actually realizing that everything that I've been through has made me who I am. And while, like I mentioned earlier, yes, there have been some instances where I have, sat in some situations that made me uncomfortable, maybe I can help teach the next generation, for how to overcome that. So
hmm.
for me, a big part of the curriculum, honestly, is thinking about how to move forward so that the next generation doesn't necessarily have to experience what we experience, what our parents experience, what our grandparents experience, because I feel like that's what's happening. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? I feel like we're in this loop and we're going through these things over and over again, and we don't necessarily have to,
Right.
And so when we start to really take, we really start to think about these things and we say, hey, you know, how can I, start teaching the next generation better than what was taught me at a younger age, or you know how can I figure that out? Like for me, that's a big part of the curriculum, is like moving, I guess, the human experience forward. You know what
Right.
I mean? That's a big part of it for me, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's a lot,
Hmm.
and understanding that I don't necessarily think that, I should have the same experience that someone had 20 years ago or 100 years ago. While they say there's nothing new under the sun, I do believe, I just believe things should be moved forward. So for me, I'm putting that on my fine print as part of the curriculum.
Right.
How do we move things forward so that, the next generation doesn't experience the things we experience. That's a big part of it for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think growth of the species of us as humans definitely is the like one of those overarching themes. Like I said, love is one of those overarching themes. Well, getting to that place where humanity is more focused on love than scarcity or
Mhm.
fear definitely is like an overarching theme of Earth School. And we're setting ourselves up, right, for this growth and this evolution, which comes through experiences, which leads to lessons, which leads to healing and growth. And you mentioned something important, and I know that's something you're getting ready to get into, but the repetition of things, to avoid that repetition, because repetition is telling us you haven't learned the lesson. Right.
Say what now? Say that again. You haven't what?
You haven't learned the lesson. If it's repeating, you haven't learned it.
Listen,
Yeah.
okay. And
Yeah.
so, which leads me to the next question. So, what do you think about graduation on Earth School? Like, do you think that we actually graduate? Do you think we get left behind? Do you think we fail a grade? Like, what do you think?
So I don't know that I believe in there being a graduation. I don't think that that is really. I think that there are many small graduations of I finally stopped attracting that type of partner, or I finally stopped um, hustling so hard to try, like, and I finally stopped ignoring my body and taking care of myself. Like those, every time you get to that point of I finally stopped something and you change that behavior and you transform that lesson, right, into a positive experience, that's a graduation of sorts. That's a I'm not doing that thing anymore. And that is a, something that should be celebrated. But when it comes to like graduating life, like you don't graduate life. Life is like a circle. Like it keeps coming back around and it's gonna keep moving forward. And but it doesn't mean that you have to repeat the same pattern. Like the wheels don't stay in the same spot. Wheels go forward, right? And so if you're stuck in that same spot, then you're spinning and you're not going anywhere. And so I don't really think that graduation, like when you die, like, oh, I passed and I graduate and now I go to heaven, or I passed and I graduate, now I get a better life the next time I come back, however, whatever your belief system is. But I think it's more, you don't know. You could be at the top of the class in one area of your life. Like you could be the best with relationships. Like all your relationships are great. People love you, but you can't make money to save your life. You know, you can't, and that the not being able to make money thing to me is a self-love thing, right? It's something in the self-love that's not right. You got to figure that out. Like what is it that's blocking this or whatever. But you could have great relationships and just be a wonderful, friend and family member and mother, father, sister, brother, daughter, whatever. Did you fail at life? No, you didn't fail at life. Um, I don't believe there's failing, period. I think you just keep moving forward in that lesson and going deeper in that lesson. And if you're not getting it, I don't see it as a fail thing necessarily, but you're going to keep having to do that lesson until you pass, until you get a passing grade. And then once you get a passing grade, I feel like you're going to get a few tests along the way. But like, hey, do you remember? Do you remember the answer to that problem over there? Okay, don't let it happen again. Because you ever notice how when you figure something out, it'll pop up again and you'll be like, oh, I know this one.
Right.
I
And
know
you
how to deal
answer
with that.
right
Yeah.
away. Yeah.
Yep. And you know that one
Go
off,
on.
right? Yeah. So it does pop back up. But as far as like just a grad, I don't think there's like this big overall graduation. It's not about the graduation. It's about the journey. It's about the classes. It's about the lessons. It's about the experiences. So yeah. How about you?
Oh, you know, I have, sat and thought about it, and I do agree with you. It is definitely about making decisions that are more like getting to a place where you're making decisions that are more in alignment with who you truly are. I feel like, you know, sometimes we have parents who don't necessarily know how to groom and grow us, you know what I mean? Because they're so busy thinking of their perspective. And so you grow up being taught a certain way, and then when you become an adult, you're like, oh, I none of that makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm taking, as you know, a gardening class, and we're talking about, there's complete metamorphosis, there's incomplete metamorphosis, and when it comes to insects and things like that. And I feel like for some of us, we have to go through a complete metamorphosis here on Earth and in our Earth school journey. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I feel like there's others of us who don't necessarily have to go through a complete metamorphosis. You know what I mean? And then there's others of us who kind of stay the same throughout all of our stages, and that is their path. That's their journey. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's not, I agree with you, it's not necessarily a graduation. You know, it's definitely about the growth and growing into your true self, whether you've been groomed from very little to be your true self, or if you've had to figure that out along the way. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and for me, that's really what it's about. It's ultimately about getting back again to that knowing and being your very true self, and knowing that you're here to do what you were meant to do. Some people are doing what they were meant to do since children.
Yeah.
You know, some people had adults who saw it in them and were like, you're a pianist. You know, they saw, you know, maybe they went to a store and the child just started playing Mozart. They're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, maybe they saw them do a backflip off the fence in the backyard, and you know, they took them to gym, you know, and now
Gymnastics.
they're a
Yeah.
gym, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you're right. It's not necessarily a graduation. It's being your, it's what's going to get you to be your true self, you know? And
Yeah.
again, sometimes you're groomed at that from a very young age, and other times you have to go on that journey. Sometimes you have family and friends who go on that journey with you. Sometimes you have to go on that journey on your own and figure
Mm-hmm.
it out. And you meet friends along the way, and you know, spirit family and soul family and all that good stuff. But that's what it's about for me. It's really
Yeah.
about honoring your soul's mission here, which you know, what you said, you know,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. It's really it's more of a shift in response and perspective. Like you change your perspective on whatever this thing that is that you're dealing with, whatever lesson is currently repeating is on repeat and you haven't gotten it. And when you finally shift that response and that trigger doesn't hit the same way, and you're able to, you know, not have the emotional response, and to change that perspective about whatever that thing is, and to change the outcome of the path, right? Then that's a graduation. But it's not really about this big performance, this ceremony, this reward at the end of the, you know, it's like our very first podcast when we were talking about pain versus pleasure. We look at pleasure as a reward, but there's pleasure in there all along. And I think part of the lesson is, are you enjoying it? Are you enjoying it? Where is the enjoyment? So many of us are still stuck in survival that we can't have enjoyment. We haven't graduated to that level, right? Because we're still dealing with the pain. And so, you know, it's shifts in perspectives, it's shifts in response, it's energetic, but it's not a pass fail. You didn't fail because you had to repeat that lesson. Maybe there was a somewhere deeper you needed to go with it. You just didn't make it there yet. Um, yeah. Something that came up for me while you were talking though was, you know, I think I've heard other people who have talked about Earth as a school as a metaphor. That like the graduation is enlightenment or the graduation is awakening. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory of that being a graduation or even a goal. You know, is it a goal? Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. It was, it came across my mind, and I wanted to ask you what you thought of that idea of like awakening or enlightening being a graduation.
And when you say awakening or enlightenment, just so I'm clear, what do you mean by that? Like, what is awakening to you, or what is enlightenment to you?
Okay, so to me, awakening is when you start to realize there's more to life than religion,
Mhm.
that there's a bigger God than the God we've been taught of, and that it's everywhere, and that we're all a part of it. And like that is what I consider awakening, is remembering the truth of your oneness with God, right? You're awakened when you start to get that. And enlightenment to me is when you fully realize like, whoa, you know, I don't
Mhm.
know. I haven't reached enlightenment yet, so I don't feel like I'm there where you have these, you know, these enlightened being like Buddha and Jesus and Muhammad and, you know, all of the prophets I consider to be enlightened beings, right? That's a different level. That's a level that a lot of people don't make it to. So those are, I think a lot of people are awakening, but not a lot of people are enlightened.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Um, do I consider that a graduation of sorts? I don't know. Like I do feel like there's levels to this. Like I can't just sit up here. I'm not gonna be big about it. Like there's definitely levels to this, you know,
Yeah.
because I remember when my mom was closed and people couldn't tell me nothing about eating healthy at one point. You know, I remember people were telling me, you know, you need to eat your greens, you need to eat your vegetables, you need to, you know, I mean, I used at one point I was hearing it so much, and I'm like, leave me alone, you know, leave me alone. And I got to a point in my life where health became very important to me. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh, you know, I have this health issue and I'm trying to figure it out. Like, it's not a very easy thing to figure out. I've gone to different doctors for help and things of that nature, and nobody could seem to help me. So I have to start looking at, you know, alternative. Okay, so what can I do? Okay, I can eat this, I can eat that, I can do, you know what I mean? And so my mind started to be open to, you know, and I started to awaken to just this whole different health and wellness lifestyle, you know what I mean? And I feel like that was a graduation for me.
Right.
Like, no shade to nobody or to my old self either. Like, no shade to, you know, young
Yeah.
uni who, you know, you know, I ate healthy a little bit, but it wasn't like it, not, especially not
Right.
like now, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
And so I do feel like we have to honor when we start to open up and we start to give ourselves the grace, or we start to allow ourselves to experience more. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So when we are separated from each other, or when we're separate, first of all, we start by being separate from ourselves, first and
Hmm.
foremost. You know what I mean? Before we're separated from anything else, you know, and yes, it's separate from the Most High, from God within us. You know, I do believe that, you know, that awakenings can be a graduation of sorts, you know, and I do
Hmm.
think that I think it's okay to honor yourself for your growth and for, you know, allowing yourself to not stay closed in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like it's like we're like little flowers that start off as little buds and we start to open up. You know what I mean? That's how I
Yeah.
feel. And I think that it's okay to, you know, it's as long as we're not using it to use, abuse, mistreat ourselves or others, because ultimately what we do to others, we do to ourselves. So keep that in
Hmm.
mind, you know. But as long as we are, you know, just giving gratitude and honor to ourselves, the Most High within us, for that graduation, I think it's okay to say, listen, I'm not where I used to be. I've leveled up. Listen, I know how to make a vegan meal, and it's going to be healthy, and it's going to be non-GMO. You know, we didn't know about these things back then. You know, we thought eating in frozen foods and stuff all the time was okay, and then you find out different things, you know, that it's not really
Hmm.
helpful to you. And so, yeah, I think I think it is a graduation, and I'm gonna say
Okay.
yes, yes, it
Okay. I
is.
guess I can see that. It's kind of like an intermediary graduation sometimes, or
Yeah,
like yeah,
yeah, like you leveled
like
up,
eighth grade to ninth grade. That middle school
right?
to high school level.
Yeah, you leveled up, and even on the bigger terms of remembering your oneness with God,
Yeah,
that's huge.
that is huge.
That's
Yeah.
huge. You
Yeah.
know how many people don't even consider that, or you know what I mean, like
Hmm.
we were not taught that. We were taught that God was up there, we're down here, and we gotta get on our knees and pray. We were not taught to get in tune with the God within ourselves and know that, hey, my mind, my heart, my gut, you know what I mean, is gonna lead, you know, I can be connected within myself to the Most High to do things that are going to not only help myself but everyone around me, in higher, in the higher alignment and highest good of all. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So I think even coming to that realization can be a graduation, but it's just all in the mindset. And as you know, it's so easy to fall back into the ego traps. And so I can see
Right.
why you won't want. You're just like, no, we don't want to. Let's not go there because, um, excuse me, I accidentally kicked the thing. But let's not go there because what's going to happen is we're going to fall back into that ego trap. But I don't think we have to fall into the ego trap. I think that's a decision that we make. And and again, it's really it can be a very fine line, but making sure that we're honoring ourselves in that space for the growth
Mhm.
that we've had, and we okay, listen, God is me and you and I and me, we are us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And being grateful for that. Like I've had some plant ceremony experiences, and I can tell you those experiences have helped me to remember the oneness.
Mhm. Right.
And I experienced such gratitude.
Mhm.
Such gratitude. And my perspective changed so greatly. I do feel like it was, like you said, like a little mid graduation, because
Yeah, yeah.
I still have some ways to go. But even being reminded of it, you know what I mean? Or having that awareness, being open to it. No, for me to go and say, hey, I want to experience this oneness,
Mhm.
I would
Mhm.
love to know what that feels like. I think that's huge. And I think
Yeah.
we should honor that. It shouldn't be abused, though, you know what I mean? It's not a cop out, it's not a way to avoid, any sort of work that we need to
Yeah.
do.
So
But yeah.
yeah, so I guess my reluctance with calling that a graduation is that it becomes about spiritual bypass, right? And
Mm,
and in, I see the graduations in the moments of dealing with the humanness, the emotion, the ugly, the messy, right?
yeah.
And yes, it is a graduation of sorts, but it's not for me. I don't see it as like I have to be enlightened. That is the most important of all. Like, I don't see it that way. Yes, it's something I'm working towards, and yes, it is a goal, but it's not necessarily the goal, right? It's not the goal. And so, or at least it's not the only goal, because in order to really, I feel, you can get to this level of one feeling of everything is great, but then you come back here to the world and you have to deal with the people, and you can't because you're so high up in the clouds, because oh, light and yeah, but you can't life.
You're gonna get knocked over, okay? Listen, you come talking that oneness in the
Oneness is
wrong spot.
great, but can you do it
Right,
practically?
right,
Can you
right.
remember your oneness when you're face to face with somebody who you can't stand because they're
Mhm,
one too?
mhm, mhm.
I should say they're one as well.
Yeah,
They're one as well, right? So can you remember their oneness? Because remembering their oneness is remembering your oneness. And for me, it's more in those moments, in the messiness of life. Those are the graduations for me. I'm not saying that it's not a graduation, but that's the way I
yeah.
look at it. Yeah,
I agree 100% with that as well. You know what I mean? And yes, two things can be true at one time for sure.
definitely.
And when you said the this is how I came up with uni. You and I. This is a remembrance for me. It's you and I. You and I are one. We are together. It helps me to remember that, everything that happens outside of me is happening, inside of me. And it helps me to, to stay in that oneness. So I completely agree with you, and I completely understand. And I think that you're absolutely right. In those moments that we are, facing those challenging moments, and we are, choosing something different, whereas maybe previously maybe, maybe you popped off before and now you're choosing grace,
Yeah.
maybe before, instead of speaking up for yourself, you didn't say anything, when you knew you should have. There's just so many different things that, again, we all each have our own, journey. And it's like, what is it in the moment that, your soul is like, I wish I would have done that. And then when it comes up again, do you give yourself that grace and the permission to do just that in
Right.
wholeness and in love? So yeah, I get it. I agree with you 100%. For sure. For sure.
Oh, this is great.
It is. It is. So next I want to talk about a little bit about karma. So, from what I recall, and I meant to bring up the definition, but from what I recall, karma, the definition of karma essentially means action. So, karma is an action. And so, based on that, what do you think? How do you think karma plays into Earth School?
So when I think of karma, I mean, I think of things like the term "what goes around comes around," or "what you put out, you get back." That's what comes to mind. When I think about those when I think about the definition of karma. Um, but what I think, or what I feel that karma is it is that kind of, it is the lesson system, right? It's, oh, you haven't gotten this lesson, so you're going to need it again. And you will, I saw it somewhere. We were talking about this the other day. It's like karma is like your auto enroll, well, auto re enroll. Like you fail, so now you automatically re enrolled in that class again.
Look, listen, I didn't make the rules.
But that's how I see it. I see it as like an automatic re-enrollment system where it's like, okay, well, you failed at loving this person this way, so now we're going to present it to you in a different person who has those same aspects. They may be amplified, right?
Hmm.
Or an experience that I have had in being re-enrolled in a class is someone who I could not stand had a behavior that I didn't like, right? And then I just always had a feeling, against that person. Didn't want to interact with them. Didn't want them in my life. Wanted to keep them at arm's length or whatever. And then caught myself doing that thing. If that's
Yep.
not karma,
Isn't that it? But you caught yourself though. That's the key. But I'm sorry to cut you off.
yeah. But that to me is karma. It's not just that you encounter the same person and you continuously have the same interaction with that person or anybody like them, but that at some point it's gonna flip around and you might do that thing and then you'll go, oh,
Mhm.
I was not kind before.
Mhm.
And and that realization of, well, now I understand what that person may have been going through. And I didn't handle this well, they didn't handle it well, but guess what, neither did I. And so karma to me is more like it's that auto enroll re-enroll system. And I do think that we can break free of karma. I think that you can get to a certain point, and maybe not in every area at the same time, but like slowly over, I don't know if it's decades or lifetimes or generations or whatever you want to call it, but eventually break free of certain patterns. And then you're not in those patterns of karma anymore because you've graduated, moved on to another lesson, another level. As you were saying, there's levels to this. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And so, I don't think of karma as like a being stuck kind of thing, but it's a feedback loop. It's just a feedback loop. It's like, hey, this didn't go right. Try it again. Oh, still didn't go right. Try it again. Oh, it didn't go right. I'm gonna put you on the other side of it. Try it again. That didn't work. Let me put you on this side of it. Try it again. So that's my take on karma. How about you? How do you think?
Yeah. So I wanted to make sure I brought up the definition, and the etymology online dictionary says that. in an Indian context, it means the sum of a person's actions in one life, which determines his form in the next. So
Mm,
there's that kind of reincarnation kind of theme again. And from Sanskrit, karma means action, work, deed, fate.
mm,
And so, yeah, I wanted to make sure that I was clear on that and I shared that. And I apologize for not being prepared with that definition initially. But with that being said, I agree with you in the aspect of, people being enrolled in karma. I feel like this is a very karmic plane that we live on. I think that karma is the great balancer outer. I feel like depending on who and what you're dealing with, there's different levels of karma. You know what I mean? I believe that some people can be a little too insensitive with some of their actions and deeds and words, and so there's going to be a great, just as much of an equal blowback of karma to help get their attention. You know what I mean? And how that comes about, like you said, it may come in the form of, meeting a similar energy in a different person. It may come in realizing it in yourself. It may come in, maybe a family member, experiences what, you know, you put out and now you see from this perspective. I think ultimately karma is a realization, but not everybody comes to the realization. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes karma has to keep knocking until you get it. And like you said earlier, sometimes you just get tired of doing, the same things over and over again, and you realize, hey, this isn't working,
mm-hmm.
And, sometimes what isn't working is not necessarily what you are, I don't want to say what you're doing to others, because again, what you do to other people, you're doing to yourself, and that's what people, a lot of times I think that's what people fail to realize. Everything that I do to you, I'm doing to me. There used to be a saying, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say to me bounces off of me and sticks back to you. There's a
Right.
very elementary saying,
Yeah.
right? Very karmic saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything I do to you is going to come back to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like, it's something that we were taught, like I said, there's we were taught those things when we were young, and there were others as well. But I think that people don't realize how karmic this life really is until they get to maybe about, you know, it depends. Sometimes they get it at their first Saturn return at 27, between 27 and 29. Sometimes they get it at their Uranus opposition. And I'm talking a little bit about astrology here for those of you who don't know, which is around 40 to, 42 to 44. And sometimes they get it at their second Saturn return between 50 and 54, something like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's different opportunities for you to see the karma in your life and how it's showing up, on a grand scale, astrologically. And then there's those everyday things as well. Like you said, you just, realize like, hey, I was doing this very thing that was annoying me, with this other person.
Right.
And I think that I think that karma just can't be escaped in this plane. I think that one way or another, what we sow, we're gonna reap at the end of the day. And I think that I just think that karma is real. Like there's just like it's just no way
Yeah.
around it. Why do I keep kicking this thing today? I'm so
Because
sorry. Um, I, I'm so excited, right, for
right.
today.
Uh,
Um, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
so yeah, I mean, I feel similarly as far as, like we live in a very karmic world because I feel like karma rules until you start to awaken, right? And then I do believe that you can transcend karma at a certain point. Maybe not in every aspect of your life, but in different aspects of your life, I do feel like, and maybe at some point humanity will graduate to a point of getting away from karma. But I do think that we can graduate from karma in a certain way, in certain aspects. And I don't want to say graduate, that's not the term, but we can transcend karma by being aware that we're doing these things. Like when we come to that awareness and we start to tap in to spirit and say, guide me on this, and that's when grace starts to flow. Right. And that's when you start to get insulated a little bit from when you slip up. You might, because I know I struggled when I first started going through kind of this awakening with and learning about karma. With I would be trying to change a behavior genuinely, like really trying to change a response, a perspective or something, and actively working on something, but slip back. And when we were in church, you hear about backsliders all the time, and just talked about so bad for backsliding and all this, and I would get back into that mindset, and then karma, oh my God, it's going to come back, and I'm never going to get out of this rut because I keep messing up. But then grace, right? And I've seen grace active in my life where I go and I mess up, I'll do something that I say I really don't want to do anymore, and I'm trying to change that, trigger that behavior or whatever that thing is, and I'll mess up and do it again, and I'll feel like there's going to be this horrible repercussion, but grace saved me from it. Whatever it was, an opportunity was presented for me to fix it, or it wasn't noticed, or random things like I'm about to get into somebody, or I cut somebody completely out, but their phone went out before I even got to the you know what I mean? Then they call me back like, what did you say? And at which point I'm able to go, yeah, I wasn't supposed to do all of that. I mean, so I do believe that there's karma, and this is a very karmic world, and that until you start to tap in and go within and ask for guidance from a higher source and not from the ego, that's when grace kicks in. And grace, because it's like a kid who's learning how to read. You don't yell at them for every time they mess up a word, right? So I think that's where grace starts to pick up. So yeah, that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I agree. We definitely, as much as we live in a karmic world, there is grace as well. You know what I mean? And when you have a sincere heart and you sincerely want to change, you sincerely want to do better, I do believe that the Most High, and when your actions align with that sincerity, you know, because we can say anything, but our actions have to definitely align. And don't get me wrong, yes, we may slip up, but there is definitely, it comes a point where either you're gonna do it or you're not. You know what I mean? Either if I know people who we just for an example, you talk about like health things. There are people who, they have, terrible diagnoses from smoking cigarettes, right? And they still smoke cigarettes. You know what I mean? And it's like, do you think that this is gonna help you, or do you think that this is gonna, you know what I mean? So just one of those kind of, just kind of like a weird example, but just from that perspective, it's just understanding that your actions at some point for sure have to be in alignment with what you are intending to do, or else
Mm-hmm.
nothing's gonna change, because again, karma is about the action that you
Right.
do. So when I think about karma, I also think about ignorance is no excuse of the law, right? So, you were ignorant to, the thing that you were doing. Maybe it's something you were taught, you didn't know. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experience karma for that. Now, when you have the awareness of it, I feel like the karma can definitely be, it can be a little more intense, and having that self
Yeah.
control is, what I mean, is
Mm-hmm.
very important. Like you're gonna have to stop at some point.
Yeah. You
you
have to
know
be in integrity, You
Mhm.
have to be authentic. You have to
Mhm.
genuinely want change and
Mhm.
improvement and betterment, and that's when grace kicks in. If you are not,
Mhm.
if you're ignoring what's in front of you, if you're refusing to change, then karma
Mhm.
doubles down.
Yeah. You can't be like, "Oops, my bad. Oh, my bad. Oh, I'm sorry, Grace. Grace. No, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no."
no.
I feel like that's, and just a side note, I feel like that's a thing in religion. You know what I mean? Like in certain religions, like in, what is that? I guess like the Catholic religion, you go
The
confess, and then
right.
next week you go do the same thing again, and now that you have, no, no, no. I don't think that's how grace works.
No, I
And
don't
I don't
either.
think that's how, I don't think you get to transcend karma just because you confessed and you said, oh,
No.
no, 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 no. It does not work like that. You
Yeah.
have to definitely be sincere, and you have to make those changes. Just like if I want to lose weight, I'm going to have to stop eating so much. I'm going to have to go exercise. I have to take the action. And
Right.
that's where the grace comes in,
Right.
when I take the action.
Yeah, your
Now, if I'm
actions have
not,
to be in integrity with your
yeah,
word. Yep,
right,
you're right.
exactly. And I just want to be clear about that,
Yeah.
because some people take the whole grace thing and they run with it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my heart is sincere. I'm trying my best. Um, Ma'am, sir, go run around that track, or else
Right.
what is, nobody asked for the thumb. This technology, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. What I was
Spirit
thinking
said,
of,
I agree.
right? I was thinking of, what's the Doctor Now? I guess the one who does My 600 Pound Life. I think his name is
Oh, I've
Doctor
never
Now.
watched it.
You've never watched it? Yeah, he
No.
he gets on them, and it's like, to me, it's like that. Like, you gotta do the work. Even Ayanla, you gotta do your work. You know what I
Yeah, you
mean?
got to do your
You
work.
you gotta do the work. You have to do the work. There's no getting around that. So I just want to be clear on that. Grace will come in, but you still gotta do the work.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Mhm.
So one final thing that we wanted to talk about was the higher self. What do you think the higher, like, what is your perspective on the higher self in relation to Earth School? Like, how does the higher self come into play here?
Mhm. So my definition of a higher self is that part of you that is connected directly to spirit. That is, you know, it's kind of like, for me, it's the bridge, you know. Um and I see the higher self, as far as Earth School is concerned, being the guide to a certain extent, and also the lesson planner, right? um where pre-incarnation there was, I would say a conversation, but who exactly are we conversing with? But there was some thought, and there was some intelligence around what this life was going to be like, and what was the desired outcome, and what experiences wanted to be had, and also where the guideposts were going to be. Okay, well, if you fail over here, then there's and I feel like it's our higher self that plans all that out. And then when we're here, that is what we tap into when we're like, what am I supposed to do here? When you really just turn over, and you go within, and you are trying to connect to that oneness, to the oneness of spirit. I find myself closing my eyes when I think of this, because I literally need to go within and feel it. It's a place that I feel. The higher self is that place. It's definitely a within. It's not a higher, up kind of thing for me anyway. I feel it deeper within, like a deep connection to everything, to the universe, to God, to everything. And that is what I believe where, the plan for the curriculum comes from, is our higher self. And I don't think of it as like a judge or a teacher necessarily. Some people look at it like that, like the teacher when it comes to Earth School. I see it more as like the connection. It's me, the human, and then the higher self is the connection between us and God. And that is the way I see it. So I guess if you were going to put it in Christian terms, there's God, there's the Holy Spirit, there's the human. And that's kind of the way I think about it because I do come from, like a Western religion background. So that's how it makes sense to me. But yeah, that's what I think. How about you? Higher self? What do you think?
Um, for me, the higher self is the energetic signature that I have no matter where I go and no matter where, basically. It's the energetic signature that travels with me through any and all reincarnations, any and all
Hmm.
planes, any and all, you know, not frequencies, but dimensions, or however you want to put it. Wherever I go, my higher self is there. You know what I mean? It's the part of me that never dies, in my
Right.
opinion. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yep.
It's the part of me that continues to live on, that's transformed and transmuted throughout any and all lifetimes. And so, with that, like, when we spoke about reincarnation and knowing that, okay, again, energy never dies, it's transformed and transmuted. Yes, this energetic signature that I have has a purpose, and it knows what it needs to do, it knows where it needs to go. It knows who it needs to be in alignment with. It's me, human, uni, that forgot where I need
Right.
to go, who I need to, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
my energetic signature knows, and the more I get in tune, like you said, with that part of myself, the more I'm in divine alignment with where I need to be. And so, everything else you said, I agree with, and I mean everything you said, I agree with, honestly. But I think it's just the key distinction for me is it being that energetic signature that no
Mhm.
matter where I go, it's always with me. And so,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's
Yeah.
really what it
I
is for me.
I totally agree with everything that you said. Specifically, it's the part of me that never dies. I definitely
Mm,
think of it as that part of me that never dies, and whether I'm reincarnated into another life, another world, it is that piece of me that follows no matter human Earth school. I don't know, other lifetimes, other places, other galaxies, wherever, spirit realm. It's that part that is always there. That's immortal. That's forever. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, that part. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is absolutely, it's really been amazing having this conversation with you. This was it's very raw, very real. You know what I mean? I'm
Hmm.
not like it's not rehearsed. We're really giving our thoughts, our feelings, our perspectives from a very real place. I'm kicking over the camera here on accident. We got some technical difficulties. It's all good, but
Hmm.
I really love, that we have this space to share and really talk about these things, because I feel like, there are definitely a lot of people out there who are looking for something just like what we're talking about, what we have to
Hmm.
share and what we have to give. So I'm really grateful to be in this space with you and to be having these conversations and these shares. And I definitely look forward to, the abundance that we have that's coming. There's so much more. This
Right.
is just the
We have so
beginning. I
much in
won't
the
be.
vault.
Yes, 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 yes. This is only gonna get
Right.
better. So
Yes, definitely.
yeah. So we wanna. Well, do you have any last words before we wrap it up here, Umi?
Um, not nothing specifically.
Okay.
I think we had a really great conversation. And I think we've even gone farther than we've gone before in our, one-on-one time, where we've had some conversations and really um, went deep into this idea of karma and higher self and graduation and all of that. And I really hope that everyone who's watching is kind of getting an idea of what we're about and what this idea of Earth School is. And um, this really is just the orientation. And once we really start getting, it's giving you the context for when we get into the deeper topics, right? And so I really appreciate everyone who's watching and sharing and liking and all of that, and continue to do that. It really helps us out to keep these things going. Um, that's it. It's so great to have you and talk with you, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Absolutely. This is just the surface. This is just orientation. We got a whole lesson plan and curriculum coming for you all. So thank
Hmm.
you so much for joining us in part two of our school orientation as we spoke about, karma, the soul's curriculum, graduation, and the higher self. I am your peer guide, Uni, and this is my lovely, beautiful sis, peer guide, Umi Steph. And we thank you for watching. Thank you for those of you who will be watching the replay. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you think. Are there any parts of this that resonated with you? Are there any parts that didn't? Keep it respectful, but I can take opposing views. I can understand different viewpoints just as long as you keep it respectful. I can understand without agreeing with you. It's all
Yeah.
good. So yeah, definitely, join us for our next time. We are looking at probably doing a check-in next week. We may do an Earth School journey, just kind of like a check-in next week while Umi will be on the road. And it'll be something quick. We'll talk about our lesson for the week, and we'll, maybe do like a quick 30 minutes, but we'll be sharing more information about that. We'll share some posts, and we'll absolutely put up the live on the calendar as well, so that you all will know it's coming. And yeah, thank you all so much. We hope you have a beautiful rest of your evening, a beautiful week. Let us
Yeah.
know, how is Earth School Journey going for you? What is your lesson this week? Tell us.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for joining. Have a good one,
Thank
guys.
you. Peace.